Hey Tony, you know me, and this is actually for you as well as the rest of your family. So those of you that don't know me, I'm Mark Schrade. I worked with Tony, and I had the privilege to get to know your dad over the last 10 years. And Tony, you know that I'm not going to be able to attend the funeral tomorrow because I have a previous contractual engagement that's about 6 months old. But I wanted to share something with you and your family. I was going to write it down, and I thought maybe this is just a better way to do it. So I just kind of want to share a few thoughts that I have and tell you about a little bit of experience with your dad. Um, about 10 years ago, I was hired as the new fire chief in St. Andrews Fire Department. And I came from the outside, wasn't from this area. You know, got there, was being tested by quite a few people, being challenged by people. Didn't exactly have the best boss to work for, but that's a whole nother story. Probably maybe about a week into the job, I had the opportunity to walk into the kitchen and I saw an older gentleman. And I didn't realize at the time he was nearly 80 years old, but he was sitting in the kitchen drinking some coffee. And somebody, I don't know who it was, introduced me to him, and they said he's the chaplain. I'm like, okay, I didn't even know we had a chaplain. Um, so we began to talk, and when I talked to your dad, he always he has a little bit of an accent, and I was a northerner, so I really had to listen, which was good for me because I tend to be a talker, and so I had to pay a little bit more attention as I listened to him. He was kind of quiet, and but you know the thing that I can remember most is the fact that he didn't judge me. He didn't judge me at all, and he started to ask me about my family immediately, and he made me feel welcome. And it was kind of a difficult transition period for me. And but every time I saw him, he always had a smile on his face, and he always made it a point to ask me about my mommy and my daddy and my wife, and um, it always made me feel good. And I want to share that with you because I think it's really important. The other thing I really noticed about him was the fact that even though I had trouble understanding him when it came time to pray, because he was very mild mannered, as you well know. But when it came time to pray, he prayed like nobody else I ever knew. And I could understand every word he did. And he just exalted God, and you could just feel it. And it filled the room, and it was just such a good feeling. So, I just feel the need to share that with you. Um, I think, as time went on, my mom died. And, what was in Tony, you and I kind of talked the other day. Um, your dad always knew where he was, and he knew when people were around. And so a couple weeks ago, and I apologize because I should have mentioned this earlier, both Karen and I do, regret that it's come to this point in time, but we celebrate your father, your Chaplain Fogle. So, but we had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to go up to the hospital. Patricia had let us know that uh, your dad was in the hospital, and we walked in. And I know at that time I thought, oh boy, this isn't going to be good because it seemed like he was on his last leg. And I walked in, and my wife was with me, and he knew who she was right away. And his eyes brightened, and there was a smile on his face. And unfortunately, they had removed his teeth, and so it was even more difficult to hear what he was saying. But I had my ear down to him, and I'll never forget. He asked me, he says, "How's my daddy?" My mom had died a few years ago, but he made it a point again. How's my daddy? And so he knew who I was. Um, he knew about me, and he asked me about my wife, and he was pleased to see her. So it was, I was doing my best to really listen to him and to talk with him, and spoke quietly in his ear, and I said, you know what, chap, I want to pray for you. And so I was going to try and do my best impression of being a pastor, and pray for him. And my wife was next to me, and I began to speak, and then the next thing I know, Chaplain Fogle starts to become clear as the day, and he exalted God, and he prayed for me. He actually, I ended up getting to stop and witness what he was doing, and I will always remember that. He always influenced me, and my life is better because of him, and I thank you for being able to share him with me, as well as my wife. Something that I'm going to ask of you, and I'm going to ask you to share this with other people. And I believe that in order to honor your father, there's an assignment that I like to ask people to do is this. And this is something that I thought would be a good way to honor your father, and you can share this with people. Tell people when they go to put their head down tonight or tomorrow night, whenever it might be, to think about, okay, the three people that have truly influenced them in their lives. Could be a father, a mother, a brother, a friend, whatever it might be. Define who those people are, and then reach out to them. Make it a project and reach out to them and let them know how they influence them. Okay, let those three people know because they want to hear from you. You may not have spoken to anybody in 20 years, but all of a sudden you want to let them know. And that's how I want to be able to, and I've done this project myself, but I encourage to be able to honor your dad. This is something we should do. So I truly believe when your dad passed away, he knew he wanted to go home, and Tony and I talked about that. And he knew he wanted to go home. And I truly believe that when your dad reached the gates of heaven, our Father, the Heavenly Father, said, job well done, son. So, peace be with you. Okay. Thank you for allowing him to impact my life. And my prayers are with you during this difficult time, but at the same time, we rejoice because we know he's with our Heavenly Father. Take care, my friends.